Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties from the Michigan Association of Counties.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83, the podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. We've got the full team back together. The band is back together after a nice weekend. I had some folks out of the office last week, so we'll get an update there. We've got holiday week coming up. We've got budget stuff. We did a lot of stuff getting done here in Lansing the past week. So let's jump right into it. All right. So we had CREC, the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference on Friday, everyone, where we got some budget numbers, which is kind of the very first, well, not the first step, but an important step in the budget process to actually know what you're working with. It's always good to know how much money you have before you start appropriating it away. So guys, why don't you, someone jump in and tell me where we're at with the CREC and what happened and where does that put us with the budgets?
Well, as we predicted, some of the policy changes that the legislature made earlier this year, changes to the income tax, changes to the earned income tax credit, a bunch of money set aside for economic development projects, is going to take a hit to the general fund and the availability of monies for appropriation. Now, the revenue estimates came back in lower, significantly lower than what the governor had anticipated back in February when she did her budget presentation. But not really unexpectedly because of those policy changes. I think, the good news is that there's a bunch of carryover money. So although, there's less revenue than they anticipated, they should have enough money to appropriate out, at least the level of the budgets that they passed out of the House and the Senate, which I think is good. Now, whether they do that or not, or they decide they're going to, take some additional cuts to the budget, that remains to be seen. But overall, they should have enough money to go forward with what they've already agreed to.
But aren't there some significant differences, not significant, but differences between the Senate and House budgets?
Yeah, there is, but there's still enough to, like, the House spent more money than the Senate did. And there's
They
enough
didn't
to
spend
cover.
more than CREC said? Is that what you're saying? That
Right.
they-
No, I'm saying that CREC came in with revenues lower than what they anticipated from January.
Mhm.
But there's carryover money from previous years and still enough money to appropriate out the highest level of the budgets that they passed out so far. Does that clarify it?
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud. And the good news for us is that the sales tax is slightly up, but I'll cover that in a minute.
Okay. All right, Madeline, Sam, did you want to add anything to the CREC discussion from that we got last week?
No, I don't have anything to add. We were presenting while CREC went on, so we kind of found out after it was all said and done.
All right, so budget outlooks, as far as the rest of the process goes, we still kind of thinking mid-June. Targets haven't been set yet, correct? We haven't heard anything on targets because that's going to be the next thing, and then they'll kind of go from there, right?
Yep. Still some negotiation on some of the points of difference between the House and the Senate, but none of that is going to happen until the leaders get together and decide how much money they want to allocate per budget.
Right, so that'll set the targets for each budget. All right, let's move on. So we talked a little bit about the juvenile justice bills, I think, last week. At that point, we had expected some introduction of bills. They hadn't been introduced. Sam, you want to give us an update on that package of bills?
I would love to. The day has finally come. The juvenile justice bill package has been introduced. It was last Thursday. It's House Bills 4624 through 4643. So it is a 20 bill package. It's huge. They're going to go through the House Criminal Justice Committee. I'm expecting a hearing in the next couple of weeks. Next Tuesday would be perfect. Can't dictate what the chair wants to do, but that's ideal. Senate bills should be introduced this week, but we saw what happened in the House last week, so to be determined. But for now, we've got a package in one chamber.
Well, that's good news. And I'm sure we'll give more updates as we move through the process and kind of specify some of the bills that are most important to us as we kind of get into that analysis. So thanks for that update. Deena, do you want to update us on the revenue sharing trust fund project?
Can I do another chair dance? Because I'm kind of
Yeah.
excited about it.
As
I
long
know.
as you limit it to 2 seconds.
Fine, fine. So as everyone knows, we've been working and trying to create a revenue sharing trust fund for many years now. The whole goal is to figure out how we can secure our revenue sharing dollars so they're not subject to, just random cuts, when the state hits a tight budget cycle. So we've come up with the idea of creating the trust fund, which would carve out a percentage of the state sales tax and put it over into the trust fund. And then that would get appropriated out every year, kind of as it is right now. We've got 6 bills introduced in the legislature, 4 in the Senate, 2 in the House. They all do slightly similar, slightly different things. But as far as, last week goes, I think we've kind of come up with an agreement. We've made an agreement with the Townships Association and the Municipal League on really what that structure would look like. And now that we are all on the same page and singing Kumbaya, we went to the Senate Majority Leader's office last week, had a nice conversation with her about it, and budget people, and I think we've got a deal. So what really that would look like is about a carve out of about 8% out of the state sales tax to go over into the trust fund. That means that when the sales tax grows, which I hinted toward earlier, it's a little bit higher. That means the money in the revenue sharing trust fund would grow. So it's actually going to be tied to state revenue. Now we still have a long way to go to get it through the process, but we're hopeful that this is going to be part of their budget conversations and budget deals before they pass them out in June.
That's good to know. I was going to ask that if this is going to be independent of the budget process, a part of the budget process. It's not technically budget bills, but of course it affects the budget, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so if they do it, we usually call it like a budget implementation bill, but if that's what they agree to, then we're going to be in good shape. Like I said, we still have lots of doors to knock on, but it's looking pretty hopeful so far. Great.
All right, moving on. Something else we spoke a little bit about last week, and I know we've gotten a lot of feedback from commissioners because this is an issue we've long dealt with, is a statewide septic code package of bills. Madeline, you want to talk a little bit more about that and kind of give us an update on where those bills are and what the plan is on that?
Yeah, just a little bit of an update. So as we discussed last week, Representative Phil Skaggs in the House, Senator Singh over in the Senate have introduced legislation to create a statewide septic code. It's going to require inspections every 5 years. It's going to eliminate a county's ability to pass a point of sale ordinance. It's going to be very costly to homeowners, but we are the last state in the US to have a statewide septic code. So we're really trying to figure out the fine details, what counties want and need out of this. And we are going to officially begin work grouping it this week. A big gathering of stakeholders and bill sponsors to fine tune it as much as we can.
Have they put any sort of time frame on moving this yet, or is it still kind of let the work group do its thing as long as that takes? Are they limiting the work group or anything like that?
I haven't heard anything about a timeline. I mean, something this massive, this big of an undertaking, you want to take your time with it. So I'm hopeful that there's no rush through it.
Right. And they still obviously have the budget to deal with. So that's probably going to be a priority before any sort of policy bills like this make their way through the legislature. So good news there that hopefully the legislature will be pragmatic on this process and kind of really look at it before making any significant changes. All right. And then finally, UPCAP. So UPCAP is the UP County Commissioners Conference. They do 2 of them a year. Obviously in the UP this year, Sam and Madeline were able to attend. Do you guys want to give us an update on what some of the issues that were talked about and what else happened up there that's safe to talk on a podcast about?
I mean, it was a really good conference. Everyone was very friendly and welcoming. We heard from Representative Preston, Representative Hill, Senator McBroom, and then staffers from Senator Stabenow's office, the governor's office, Congressman Bergman's office. So it was a really good turnout for legislative staff.
Sam, anything to add?
I just wanted to say that they gave us a fudge pasty.
Oh,
And I've-
what?
And I've
It
never
was-
had any pasties before. I'm saying that right? It's pasty.
Yes.
It was
Mhm.
fudge
Okay.
in the shape of
Yeah.
a pasty, and they were phenomenal.
It was fantastic. And
That's
a
a lot
mug.
That's a lot
Yeah.
of fudge.
Yeah, great turnout from staff, like Madeline said, and legislators as well. And heard from some that they frequently listen to our podcast. So glad to hear we have listeners out there.
Always is. Deena, were you going to say something? I thought you were going to say something there.
I was gonna say something I was thinking
That you
a
shouldn't.
regular pasty stuffed with fudge, and that sounded completely horrific. So I'm glad that you clarified, because now, I'm not freaking out.
Steve, you did get a shout out though.
Uh-oh.
Joe Stevens, talked again about your trip up there to the ski jump and how grateful he was that you turned out for that and the positive things you've said about it since then. So
It was a fun event. So if you do get an opportunity to go to the ski jumps at Pine Mountain, I think they're every 2 years or something like that. But yeah, 10,000 people that tailgate for a few days watching ski jumpers was kind of fun. And I got to go all the way to the top of the ski jump and watch some of the practicing. And it was a really, really fun event. So, well, great. Thanks, guys. Anyone have anything else before we wrap things up?
happy
No.
Memorial Day weekend.
Yep, holiday weekend. Everyone have a good holiday weekend. We'll, I don't know if we'll have a podcast or pre-taped one for next week, but if we don't talk next week, I hope everyone has a good week and a good weekend, and we'll get through this final push of the budget here before the legislature takes a summer break. So if you need anything from us or any of the staff, please let us know. Our committees continue to meet. I think they'll be wrapping up platforms this month. And those will go to the board and then do our general membership at our annual conference coming up in October in Kalamazoo. So if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83.